Hollywood loves to tell the world that every stunt is controlled, every explosion is safe, and every leap from a burning building is performed with military precision. But behind the camera, behind the insurance papers, the smiling interviews, and the glossy promotional tours, lies a truth the studios hope you never ask about. Because sometimes the danger isn't movie magic. Sometimes the danger is real. On the sets of some of the biggest action films ever made, people were burned, crushed, paralyzed, and even killed. And what the public never realized is this: in case after case, no one was charged. Not the studios, not the producers, not the stunt coordinators, not the people who approved the conditions in the first place. The cameras kept rolling. The lawyers kept quiet. And somewhere inside the machinery of Hollywood, decisions were made quietly, strategically, to bury the disasters under stacks of non-disclosure agreements, sealed settlements, and internal investigations that never saw the light of day. For decades, the industry has relied on a simple truth: audiences love authenticity, but they don't want the guilt that comes with it. They want to see bodies fly, cars explode, and heroes walk through fire. But they don't want to know that the person who took that hit might never walk the same way again. Tonight, we pull back that velvet curtain. These are the stories of broken bones hidden behind box office victories, careers destroyed in the shadows of blockbuster franchises, and the tragedies Hollywood did everything in its power to smother so that the show could go on and the profits could stay untouched. This is the side of action cinema that no studio wants to discuss. But we will. Fact one, the Expendables 3 prop gun that wasn't supposed to fire. The set of The Expendables 3 was built on the promise of nostalgia heroes from this 80s and 90s returning for one more explosive mission. But during a chaotic shootout sequence, something went terribly wrong. A prop weapon believed to be secured and declared cold discharged a projectile with enough force to pierce through the vest of a background actor. He collapsed instantly, shocking everyone within view of the monitors. Crew members rushed in, but the initial response wasn't medical. It was managerial. Phones came out not to call emergency services, but to alert the studio's legal department. Statements were coordinated before paramedics even arrived. The production halted for only a brief moment before the director was urged to continue filming. The actor survived, but the incident was folded into a non-disclosure agreement so airtight that even his name disappeared from call sheets in subsequent days. On paper, it never happened. To the public, The Expendables 3 was just another loud, explosive summer release. But to those who witnessed the accident, it was a reminder that even seasoned action veterans can't outrun the unpredictability of real weaponry. Fact 2, Transformers, Dark of the Moon, a stunt gone wrong that changed a life forever. On Transformers, Dark of the Moon, the action was designed to feel gigantic machines collapsing skyscrapers, cars flipping through the air, and humans thrown like rag dolls. But during one high-intensity sequence, the danger stopped being cinematic and became horrifyingly real. A stunt vehicle malfunctioned, sending a thick metal cable snapping through the air at violent speed. The cable tore through the windshield of a car driven by a young stunt performer. It struck her head with brutal, force-shattering bone, causing permanent spinal damage. She would never walk normally again. Cast and crew froze as the reality of what had happened sank in. Paramount's response was swift, not in accountability but in containment. Production shut down for a few days, not to investigate, but to prepare a settlement. Lawyers met with the family before the press could catch the scent of the story. A multi-million-dollar payout followed, sealed under a non-disclosure agreement that prevented anyone from discussing the circumstances publicly. The film went on to make over $1 billion. But the young woman who once dreamed of a career in stunts found her future abruptly, brutally rewritten, erased from Hollywood's narrative as efficiently as a scene cut from the final edit. Fact 3, XX, the fatal motorcycle jump no one was supposed to see. The XX franchise sold itself on adrenaline, extreme sports, impossible jumps, and death-defying stunts. But behind the bravado, the first film carried a tragedy that nearly derailed production entirely. Vin Diesel's close stunt double, a veteran rider known for impossible precision, attempted a motorcycle jump off a bridge, one of the movie's signature set pieces. Everything was timed to perfection, until it wasn't. A gust of wind, a slight miscalculation, or a mechanical fault Hollywood never clarified, which sent him crashing into the understructure at fatal speed. He died instantly. Crew members who had worked with him for years stood in stunned silence, some in tears, while producers scrambled to maintain control of the set. The studio labeled the incident an unavoidable accident, closing the door on further inquiry. No one was held responsible. Filming resumed after a brief pause, and the stuntman's name appeared only in a quiet dedication tucked away at the end of the credits. Easy to miss, easy to forget. It was a reminder that in action cinema, the line between spectacle and tragedy is thinner than audiences ever realize. Fact 4, The Dark Knight, a high-speed chase that ended in silence. During the filming of The Dark Knight, Christopher Nolan pushed for realism, practical effects, real vehicles, real speed. In one of the film's most ambitious chase sequences, a stunt truck barreled through an industrial zone of London at high velocity. But in the rush to capture the perfect shot, a supporting crew vehicle miscalculated its positioning. A stunt car clipped the edge of a camera truck, sending it spinning out of control. The impact crushed a special effects technician who had been setting up equipment nearby. He died at the scene. Cast members were shaken, but the production moved quickly into damage control. Nolan, devastated, briefly halted filming, yet Warner Bros. Stepped in almost immediately. Investigations labeled the death a tragic workplace accident, closing the case with remarkable speed. No criminal charges. No negligence findings. Just a quiet settlement and a production machine pressed on. The public never learned the technician's name, and the tragedy remained a shadow behind one of Hollywood's most acclaimed films, proof that even masterpieces can be built on moments the studio will never allow in a documentary. Fact 5, Deadpool 2, stunt woman's first day became her last. On Deadpool 2, a stunt performer was hired to double for Domino, her first film job, but she was already a champion racer with exceptional skills. The scene ride a motorcycle down a small ramp stop on a marked symbol on paper. But the production was running behind schedule and multiple takes were demanded under increasing pressure. During one of the final runs, the bike accelerated faster than intended. She lost control, crashed into a glass facade, and died instantly. Crew members were horrified, but within hours, Fox's legal team arrived on set. The studio insisted she wasn't wearing a helmet because the character didn't wear one, a statement that sparked outrage within the stunt community. But as the days passed, Fox maneuvered the narrative, diverting blame onto circumstances rather than decisions. No charges were filed. No one held accountable. And yet every person present knew the truth: the scene could have been filmed differently, safer, slower. But the push for speed, both in the stunt and in the shooting schedule, overrode caution. Fact 6, Mission Impossible, when Tom Cruise's obsession with realism broke his body. Tom Cruise is famous for refusing stunt doubles, but on Mission Impossible Fallout, his dedication came at a painful price. While filming a rooftop chase, Cruise leaped from one building to another, except he didn't make it. His foot slammed into the wall, snapping his ankle on impact. The sound of the brake was caught on camera. For a moment, the set froze. Crew members rushed in, but Cruz, grimacing in agony, pulled himself up and finished the shot by hobbling out of frame. Production shut down for weeks afterward, costing the studio millions. Behind closed doors, executives debated whether the stunt coordinator, safety supervisors, or Cruz himself was to blame. But ultimately, no inquiry went beyond internal paperwork. Because when the star is also the producer, accountability becomes negotiable. The injury made headlines, yet the truth was quietly edited out. The film used the actual footage of Cruz breaking his ankle, turned pain into content, turned an accident into marketing. Hollywood didn't apologize. Hollywood monetized it. Fact 7: Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, a fall that ended a career. Daniel Radcliffe's stunt double had been with the franchise since the beginning, a talented performer who had executed some of the series' most dangerous moments. But during the final film, a wire pull stunt designed to simulate being blasted backward by an explosion went catastrophically wrong. He was yanked into the air at high speed, but instead of landing on the cushioned area planned for the stunt, he slammed into a solid wall. Crew members heard the sound heavy final before they saw him drop motionless to the ground. He survived, but the impact shattered his spine, leaving him paralyzed from the chest down. A young man whose career had been built on movement suddenly faced a lifetime unable to walk. Warner Bros. Immediately initiated an internal investigation, but its scope was narrow, its conclusions vague. The public was told it was a rare, tragic accident, and behind-the-scenes legal teams moved fast to establish financial support while ensuring no blame could be placed on the production. The stunt world called it preventable. Hollywood called it closed. Fact 8: Troy, when Brad Pitt became his own mythic irony. During the filming of Troy, Brad Pitt, playing Achilles, was involved in a sequence that required intense physical training and repeated sprinting. Production schedules were brutal, and the star was pushed to perform the demanding scene over and over again, despite mounting fatigue. Then it happened: a sharp snap in his leg. Pain tore through him. He collapsed on the field, unable to stand. The diagnosis was almost poetic. His Achilles tendon had torn. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances. The irony was too on the nose: Achilles hobbled by his own Achilles tendon. But the mood quickly shifted from eerie amusement to logistical panic. Production halted. Insurance companies reviewed coverage. Studio executives grew tense. Behind-the-scenes concerns emerged about whether Pitt had been pushed too hard or allowed too little recovery time between takes. But those questions disappeared once the studio lawyers stepped in. It was framed as a minor injury in press releases. But the reality was that it nearly derailed Pitt's career. Hollywood doesn't like vulnerabilities, especially not in its gods. Fact 9: The Crow, when fiction turned fatally real. The Crow is remembered as a cult classic, but its legacy is forever stained by the on-set death of Brandon Lee. During a scene involving a handgun, a piece of a real bullet lodged in the barrel from improper prop handling was propelled out with lethal force when the blank was fired. The crew watched in horror as Lee collapsed, bleeding out in front of them. At first, many thought he was acting. When the truth sank in panic, swept through the set, the investigation should have been extensive. Instead, it was rushed, murky, and filled with contradictions. Prop supervisors blamed scheduling pressure. Scheduling blamed budget constraints. And the studio blamed no one. Ultimately, the death was ruled an accident. No criminal charges. No professional bans. No consequences. Hollywood moved on. Another production wrapped. Another tragedy folded into the industry's long list of unfortunate occurrences. But fans still whisper the same question decades later: how could a real bullet ever be on that set? Fact 10: The Hangover part, a comedy set that left a man in a coma. While the Hangover part, I sold itself as outrageous comedy behind the scenes was an accident that was anything but funny. A veteran stunt performer was filming a sequence meant to look chaotic but harmless, a car speeding through Bangkok traffic before skidding to a stop. But on one take, the vehicle struck a corner at the wrong angle, sending him violently headfirst into a post. The impact was devastating. He was rushed to the hospital, slipping into a coma. When he woke, part of his skull had been removed to relieve pressure. The damage was permanent, altering his motor abilities and speech for life. Warner Bros. Reacted swiftly, but not publicly. The studio minimized the incident in statements, calling it an unexpected mishap, a cold euphemism for a man whose life had been changed forever. Behind the scenes, legal teams negotiated a settlement, not an apology, not accountability, just a transaction. The audience saw the movie, laughed at the chaos, and never knew that one of the men making it possible left the set in silence, his career and future erased in a moment. Fact 11, Rambo First Blood part, close call that no one was supposed to know about. On the set of Rambo First Blood part, the explosions were bigger, the helicopters flew lower, and the stunts were more dangerous than almost any action film of its era. But during one intense sequence, Sylvester Stallone found himself inches from catastrophe. The scene required Stallone to be lifted by a helicopter while dangling from a harness. Suddenly, the aircraft dipped too low, and the spinning blades came within a terrifying distance of his head. Crew members screamed for the pilot to pull up. It was seconds that separated a blockbuster sequel from a death on camera. The incident was immediately buried. No press, no reports, no investigation, only whispers among crew members who knew what nearly happened. For years, the story lived only as an unofficial rumor dismissed by the studio as an exaggeration. But decades later, those who were there confirmed the truth. Stallone was nearly decapitated by a production too eager to push realism. The film continued earning millions, but the near-fatal moment remained one of Hollywood's most carefully kept secrets. Fact 12, The Maze Runner, when the star became the casualty. During the filming of The Maze Runner, the death cure Dylan O'Brien was performing a sequence involving a moving vehicle, a stunt designed to look reckless but controlled. But something misaligned. The timing was off, and in seconds, control evaporated. O'Brien was struck, thrown, and dragged. His face hit the ground with crushing force. His injuries included multiple fractures and severe trauma that required months of surgeries and rehabilitation. Production halted indefinitely, though early studio statements downplayed the severity. It wasn't until much later that the truth emerged. He nearly died. And the emotional toll was so intense that O'Brien considered leaving acting altogether. Those on set said the stunt should have been reworked or postponed. Too risky. Too many moving parts. But schedules rule Hollywood and momentum beats caution. So the stunt went ahead and O'Brien paid the price. Behind the polished marketing and upbeat interviews, the studio quietly avoided any discussion of fault, another accident, another sealed record. Fact 13, Quantum of Solace, the Bond stunt driver who barely survived. The James Bond franchise is synonymous with precision. Every car chase is a symphony of control on screen. But while filming Quantum of Solace, one of the most skilled stunt drivers in the business found himself fighting for his life. He was behind the wheel of an Aston Martin, rehearsing a chase meant to feel effortless and sharp. But on a narrow mountain road near Lake Garda, the surface slick from morning moisture, the car lost traction. In a fraction of a second, the vehicle veered off course, smashed through a barrier, and rolled multiple times down a steep embankment. Rescue teams scrambled down the hillside, expecting the worst. The car was a mangled shell, nearly unrecognizable. Miraculously, the driver survived, but with injuries that took months to heal. MGM quickly labeled the event an unfortunate incident, a phrase polished enough to silence deeper questions. But crew members later admitted that the route had been flagged as risky, the speeds too aggressive for the conditions, and the schedule too tight to reconsider. Bond films love to show agents walking away from explosions. Reality wasn't nearly so glamorous. Fact 14. The Avengers: A Cable Explosion no one was ready for. Marvel films are built on controlled chaos, superheroes crashing into buildings, blasts erupting from all angles. But on the Avengers, one stunt went from controlled to catastrophic without warning. A stunt woman was wired to perform a mid-air yank simulating being hurled by an alien force. The pyrotechnic charge connected to her cable was meant to fire with a soft pop. Instead, it detonated with violent force. The blast tore through her face and body, causing severe burns and lacerations. Crew members were stunned. Some thought the pyrotechnics team had miscalculated, others believed the cable had been compromised. But Marvel's official explanation was deliberately vague equipment malfunction. Production paused only briefly before the massive machine of the Marvel Cinematic Universe resumed its momentum. The stunt woman underwent multiple surgeries, but her identity remained protected, shielded from press inquiries because Marvel had a billion-dollar franchise to safeguard. Another casualty hidden behind superhero spectacle. Another human cost overshadowed by the glow of CGI triumph. Fact 15, Now You See Me. Underwater. In Now You See Me, Isla Fisher performed a scene in which her character is trapped in a water-filled tank struggling against chains as the clock ticks down. On camera, the tension feels theatrical. Off camera, the terror was real. During one take, Fisher became genuinely stuck. Her release chain jammed and the safety button meant to alert the crew was out of reach. She thrashed, signaling for help, but the crew assumed she was acting. Every movement looked authentic because it was.
Seconds dragged into long, panicked moments as Fisher fought for breath.
She later said she realized she had only two choices: stay calm or drown. She managed to wriggle free, just enough to surface for air, before the crew finally realized something was wrong. The incident was quietly dismissed in interviews as a close call, a casual phrase, masking just how narrowly disaster was avoided. In the editing room, the footage was reviewed. Some said her real panic made the scene feel even better. Hollywood has always had a strange relationship with authenticity. Bonus fact, the accidents Hollywood buried before anyone could ask questions. For every headline-making stunt disaster, there are dozens more that never make it past the studio gates. Injuries that vanish into sealed reports. Careers ended quietly. Families pressured into silence. These are the stories Hollywood buys before they can ever be told. On some sets, a fall from a rigging platform is rewritten as fatigue. A pyrotechnic misfire becomes unexpected debris. A faulty harness is excused as athletic miscalculation. And hovering behind every explanation is the same unspoken truth: the industry is built to protect itself, not the people risking their lives to make the impossible look effortless. Studios deploy entire teams whose job is not to prevent accidents, but to control the narrative after they happen. Lawyers arrive on set within hours. Insurance adjusters draft statements before the injured performer is even out of surgery. Crew members are instructed to say nothing until contacted. And victims, often terrified to lose their careers, sign non-disclosure agreements in exchange for settlements that forbid them from ever speaking publicly. Some stunt performers describe a chilling pattern after an accident. They simply stop receiving calls. No formal firing, no explanation, just silence. career erased not because of fault, but because the studio cannot risk employing a reminder of what happened. Certain productions become whispered warnings in the stunt community sets, where explosions fired too early, where safety meetings were skipped to save time, where actors insisted on performing stunts they weren't trained for, where corners were cut because we have to get the shot today. None of these stories reach the press. None appear in documentaries or behind-the-scenes specials. They exist only in backstage conversations traded like ghost stories among people who know the price of spectacle. And the most unsettling truth is this: many of the accidents you do know about are only the ones Hollywood failed to hide.